welcome everyone. Welcome, one and all to Impolite Company on the GCPR.live network, where we defy the old adage and dive headfirst into religion and politics. I'm your host, Matthew Best, here to walk with you and dialogue and showcase the power of seeing the humanity in people with different perspectives. If you've got questions you want to ask or share a comment, drop me an email at contactimpolitecompany@gmail.com. And if you enjoy what we're doing here and find it of value, please support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/impolite company. Even though I don't drink coffee, that's the website that we have to use. So all the proceeds go right back into the show to make it better. Or if you want to feel like it's more legitimate to support an actual organization, you can show some love to Christ Lutheran Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the church I'm called to serve, which includes 3 free health clinics that have served over 100,000 people have come and visited to these clinics since 2018. And you can find that at christharrisburg.org/donate. And you can dive further into topics that we talk about on my blog at pastormatthewbest.com. There's a whole bunch of stuff, right? And then lastly, if you're looking for a tool, and we're going to talk a little bit about this during our time, for especially about having difficult conversations while seeing the humanity of others, highly recommend, and I'm sure my guests would as well, especially around the issue of gun violence. You can check out American Roulette. It's a novel that follows 8 characters over the course of one day that ends in tragedy. We highlight the humanity of everybody, the victims, the community, and even the perpetrator. We offer no solutions, just conversation, and all proceeds of the book go to organizations that address gun violence, and you can find that wherever you find good books. All the links are going to be posted on the video once that goes live. So today I am pleased to be talking with my friend and fellow advocate in the trenches, Pat LaMarche. And Pat focuses her energies writing and speaking about poverty. She has a particular interest in the far ends of the homeless spectrum, elder orphans and unhoused babies, having authored 8 books. Can't believe it's 8 books, Pat. That's amazing. Yeah. Dealing with poverty and human struggles. Pat still works as a freelance journalist for a Philadelphia area newspaper. She's educated as a historian. She has written a history book, a fantasy young adult novel filled with historic figures, comic books, and all sorts of other things. She relies on any and every method available to direct the attention of the mainstream public towards issues of great import. And she's also, of course, one of the authors of American Roulette. And in addition, Pat, her ongoing homeless advocacy project, which we're also co-partners in crime on, is the annual Homeless Remembrance Blanket, and which it covered 18,000 square feet on the U.S. Capitol's West Lawn a couple of years ago. You can visit memorialblanket.org for more information on upcoming projects about that. So welcome, Pat.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matthew.
Absolutely. It's not like we don't get to talk very often, but
not as much as I like.
I know, right? But I am excited to have you as a guest on my show. And really kind of talk about journalism and religion and politics, and how to have healthy conversations around those things, because it's I think it's just a very needed a topic in that. And so yeah,
I don't know how. So is it over? I just had a conversation this morning with a woman who told me that homelessness was mental illness and drug addiction. And she knew how lucky she was because her dad was an alcoholic, but they always had a home.
Wow.
And I said, that was a luck. That was money, which maybe money's luck. But I said, everybody homeless isn't an alcoholic or, and I can take you home, show you someone like your family or someone with mental illness, or show you someone with developmental delays, or it's not the criteria for homelessness. The criteria for homelessness is poverty. And she just was so hard pushing back against me. And I'm not, I mean, I am an authority on homelessness, sorry. But
I would
but
hope so at this point.
but I spent the better part of a decade, working in homeless shelters.
Yeah.
And here's Jane Q. Public who knows
Right.
everything. And so I don't know how to be polite. So maybe I am right for the show because I am impolite. I wasn't impolite with her. I just said, you have a nice
Yeah, there you go, right?
day.
Well, that really kind of hits on the thing of people think that like there's this sense of certainty. Like we have this addiction as human beings. I'm sure I'm guilty of it as well. I'm sure you are of things that we know a little bit about, and then we jump to like, well, then obviously we know a lot of stuff about it, as opposed to, when you really know a topic and homelessness, Pat, um, you understand how complex and there's less certainty than there is there's far less certainty around these topics than not. I mean, it's just it gets so complex.
Right. And even if this chick was right and it's all a bunch of alcoholics on the
Yeah.
street, percent everybody's an alcoholic, then why don't we have 15,000 more rehab facilities in the United States?
Right.
Okay, this lady knows the cause, so let's address the cause. But no, we don't invest anything. And the other reason I think people choose certainty, even if they're wrong,
Yeah.
because if and I felt really a little bit bad, not really bad, a little bit
Yeah.
bad, because this woman obviously had a lot of struggles with her dad, who was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So she's pulling all of that forward into her conversation.
Right.
But if you have to believe my dad was an alcoholic, bad things happen to him, I'm not an alcoholic. Bad things won't happen to me.
Yeah.
Only people on the street have substance abuse problems. And so as long as I stay on the straight and narrow, that will never happen to me. But if you have to believe that it's literally losing your job suddenly or finding out you have colon cancer, like I have had when I ran shelters, I lost track of the number of state troopers or ambulances that dropped people at my door.
Yeah.
Who didn't want to go to a homeless shelter, but
Right.
they were released from the hospital and they had nowhere to go and nowhere to change their colostomy bag.
Right.
You know, oh.
Well, and this kind of gets into the whole idea of, it can't happen to me, right? Because it creates this, again, it's this larger sense of uncertainty and this lack of control that we have so little control, and that humans don't like to hear that. Right.
Yeah.
I was just talking with somebody the other day about this idea of, just wrap your brain as much as you possibly can around the expanse of the universe. And then here we are, this tiny speck, and all the things that are going on in space that we have not only no knowledge of, but no control over. Like an asteroid could come, right? And just wipe out life on the planet. And we could literally do nothing about it.
Right.
And so that's not a pleasant thought for most people to think about. But there's this sense of, because it's scary to be like, oh, we're not in control. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about, serious issues like homelessness or gun violence or whatever the case may be, there's so much randomness that happens in this that it makes any of these issues really complex. In like homelessness, well, there's not just one thing, like you said, that is the cause. I mean, we can see that, like, if you don't have money, then that's gonna create a problem, right? But if there's not adequate health care, because you mentioned, if somebody, and I've met people who became homeless because they got sick, something happened, they could not work, they were not released to work. And so if you're not working, you're not making any money, you're going to lose everything that you've got. And it's not because they didn't want to work, it's just that they were never cleared to go back to work.
Well, and then there are the people who, I mean, most of the people I've known experiencing homelessness who are old enough to work do work. So that's the other myth, is that why don't they get jobs? Well, they do have jobs, but the jobs don't pay well enough to live somewhere, especially if you live in a community or a county or a state where housing costs are astronomical and there's just not housing stock. But there was a woman who she contacted us, or a friend of hers contacted us. She was making blankets for us in the homeless shelter she was in, getting donated yarn and making blankets for us, worked full-time or more as a fast food person, which, next time you have a cheeseburger, think about the fact that the person waiting on you might not have a place to have good hygiene.
Right.
And her apartment she had lived in for 11 years, the landlord was taking all 3 units and making them Airbnbs.
Wow.
So she had been a good tenant, paying her rent on a fast food salary for 11 years. And she got evicted through no fault of her own. Because this was a coastal community. Landlord could make $5,000 a month instead of the $1,100 she was giving him. Sure, why not? It's, free enterprise. But the reason is because there's nowhere for people to live when you throw them out. And there's nowhere else to go, and there's no social safety net. And, I think we saw a lot of change during COVID. We saw a lot of investment in some parts of it, or freezes, but it was nothing like the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which happened after the economic crisis of 2008, when President Obama and Vice President Biden were first in, and they passed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And then money was given to the root source of homelessness. Instead of freezing evictions, they paid electric bills, they paid water bills, they literally put the money in the underpinning problem that was causing homelessness for so many people. And it ain't rocket science. It's done all over the world, and now we have done it too. So I just think I feel badly that this woman wouldn't open her mind enough to maybe consider that there's a victimless thing going on out there. And if there's a failing that causes homelessness, it's society's failing. And I'm not saying there isn't the occasional person who's just a jerk.
Sure, right.
They're in homes too. They're jerks who have homes to live in. So, but I'm probably more frustrated in my own inability to actually have a conversation that resulted in anything besides have a nice day. Right. Really how I ended it.
And I've had conversations like that as well on a variety of different things where it's just like you end up hitting a wall. And honestly, there's a whole range of thoughts about that. I'm of the opinion of when it's just not going to go anywhere, you just end it, because it's the most loving thing that you can do. That's honestly, like, it's the most loving thing, because then it prevents me from like going off the ledge and yelling at somebody or calling names or whatever the case may be. And it's obviously not going to go somewhere. So if people have their own we'll call it agendas for a conversation, and some people, they just have this need to be right, and other folk, like I try to approach things and what can I learn? I'm not 100% great at that all the time, but I try to, what can I learn? What, even with conversations with people I know I'm going to disagree with, I want to understand, how did that person come to that conclusion? Because it just helps me understand who they are with that. So,
well, Matthew, I got to tell you, I've been your friend for a pretty long time. I don't know, 8 or 10 years. You're really good at it.
Well, thanks.
You really are. You're very good at patient listening and direct. I don't want the word confrontation is too much.
Sure.
But you don't let people lie to your face. And so this woman wouldn't want me to say that she was lying, but she was lying, and it was willful because she didn't want to hear that what she was saying was untrue. So, but if I called her a liar, holy
Oh, that
threat
would have
into that.
exploded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Even if I'd said, you don't mean to, but you're lying to me right now because,
Mm,
you don't have enough knowledge to make. It's like the people who told you that the vaccines were causing COVID.
right.
A lie. But they didn't have enough information, willfully or otherwise, to tell the truth. And what's really helpful is there's a reason you don't take out your own kidney. There's
Right.
reasons you go to people with a better skill set than yours
Yeah.
in some field or another. Um, and you get someone to do the important things in your life that has more background in it.
I think in addition to what you were just talking about, I think there's also the idea of what people are trying to protect. And so a piece of it is definitely information, but you said this kind of willful resistance to information because I think people know that, oh my gosh, well, if I'm open to this, what else is the whole house of cards going to collapse?
That's truth.
And
Right.
then where's that going to leave me?
Yeah.
Which again is a scary place for people, that if they think the whole house is going to fall down, oh my gosh.
I think you just made me understand her.
Ah.
Ding, 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 ding. You need a rubber chicken to come down or something when
There
um,
you go.
because right now she has diagnosed the problem
Yeah.
as unfixable by her.
Right.
She couldn't fix her dad's alcoholism,
Right.
and
Right.
she can't fix the homeless guy, gal,
Right.
5-year-old's alcoholism. Seriously, you think 5-year-olds are homeless because they're
Yeah.
alcoholics, right?
Right.
But so now
Right.
she doesn't have anything to do because she can't
Right.
fix the problem. It's the person's, addiction problem. She's
Yep.
not a mental health specialist. Nope, homelessness is not my problem.
No response. It removes the responsibility of having to act because, if you
Wow.
see a child who's homeless, and again, I'm making a lot of assumptions in this, right? That you can look at a child and see that they're homeless. But let's just say, for the sake of argument,
Well, if
that
you're in a shelter, you can.
right. Well, there you go. Right. And
Right.
and so it just kind of moves you into, well, I should do something because this is a human being,
Yeah.
and I got to do something. And that could be as small as getting a meal or just going. Even I've told people, I'm like, go and just when you're talking with somebody who's asking for something, introduce yourself and ask what their name is, because you're humanizing somebody in that sense. And most of the time, people don't get they're not treated like humans.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah, I saw a woman speaking yesterday or the day before who said the biggest hardship of her homelessness was the complete lack of respect.
yeah. Oh yeah,
The
yeah.
first thing homeless people experiencing homelessness lose when they lose their home is respect from others.
Absolutely.
I also always tell people because I'm a buzzkill,
Yeah.
Debbie. So every single school system by federal mandate has to have a homeless liaison.
Right.
And there's a website and an organization called Schoolhouse Connection. And if you go to Schoolhouse Connection, you can ask or look up your local homeless liaison and call them and say, hey, I don't need to meet anybody, but if you know a kid who needs shoes, because what they do is they are the people who identify kids experiencing homelessness in the schools and they remove all the barriers. And I know you had Diane Nyland on
Yeah.
earlier in the show, so maybe she already talked about this. But when you call that homeless liaison, you're not going to meet these kids, and you shouldn't. They deserve their
Right.
anonymity, their privacy. But that homeless liaison has her hands full.
Yeah.
And if it's a kid reporting to school in winter boots in August, every other kid, like cue the bullies, every other kid knows that kid's got no shoes.
Right.
Right. So if you let the homeless liaison know that you're willing to help, and the liaison may call you and say, I've got a kid who needs a pair of eyeglasses. And you might say, I can't do that this month. And that's okay.
Right.
But it is a way to help really have an impact,
Yeah.
huge impact, and literally never leave your couch if you don't
Yeah.
want to. I leave
Right.
my couch. Why would I want to leave my couch?
Right. Right. I mean, there's lots of different ways that people can help. It's the same thing of, the church that I pastor, Christ Lutheran, we have those 3 health clinics. and people support those clinics in a variety of ways. A lot of folks are like, "Oh, I want to come and volunteer." I'm like, "No, you don't. It's not what you
Yeah.
expect, and it's hard. And there's privacy issues, so we can't just have anybody in. But people do drives for collecting of different things that people would find in the drugstore and those type of things, bandages and those type of things, but even kind of cosmetics and some basic
Sanitary
clothing,
pads.
right? But then
Yeah.
other people, they're gifted that they are able to write out a check or to make some kind of a donation, and it's like that is just as important as somebody coming and doing something hands-on, because you need the whole range, and that's what I hear you're talking about in there.
Well, you and I work on the homeless memorial blanket
Yeah.
project, hashtag memorial blanket. And I just saw a woman who had posted the latest blanket that she's made. So what we do is we encourage people to make handmade blankets for perfect strangers. I don't call them total strangers. I call them perfect strangers. And we take all the blankets and we make a gigantic art display on December 21st in honor of Homeless Remembrance Night, when we honor the people who die on the street that year, as well as the people who live on the street. And then, if we've got 750 blankets, that's what it would look like if 750 people were laying on the ground right now. And they are somewhere
Right.
else.
Right.
And then
That
all those blankets are given to people in need. And
right.
so this one woman posted a picture of her new blanket and thanked the woman who paid for the yarn.
Hmm.
And then the woman who paid for the yarn got on the thread on Facebook, and you can join. We have a lot of Facebook sites. Go to memorialblanket.org and you
Yeah.
can find your local state. But anyway, the woman who paid for the yarn got on and said, "Oh, thank you for making the blanket." So this was like such a wonderful thing, because there's the person who can't afford the
Right.
yarn but is willing to spend the time, and the person who doesn't have the skill set or the time and is willing to provide the yarn or the fabric or we get a lot of quilts. I do need, if someone's paying attention and wants to do something, I do have a real world learning set of classes at a high school now, Vox High School in
Uh-huh.
Philadelphia, and all 5 of their classes want to make a blanket.
It's awesome.
So I need fabric.
Fabric. Any particular size or anything like that?
Well, what would be great if if they have fabric to donate. Remember that one huge donation we got that
Yeah.
year that filled up your whole foyer?
Yeah.
Um, if people had like a Joann's card
Ah,
or something like that, a Joann's gift card or a Walmart gift card or just a
or
general.
Michael's or any of those.
Michael's might be a little tough because we need fabric.
Okay.
But if someone wants to help, I'm from the Charles Bruce Foundation, which is a 501c3,
Hmm.
or you can contact Matthew or whatever. But yeah, that's what we need now is fabric for these 5 classrooms in Philadelphia, where the blanket's going to be this year
Right.
at Independence National Park, which
Right.
it takes 3 years to get a national park permit.
But
See this gray hair? Look
yeah,
at you.
yeah, I know, right? And I keep kidding. I'm like, I don't know how we're going to keep getting any bigger than this. We're going to do it on the moon one year. I think we'll have one of the astronauts take a blanket up to
I was thinking
space.
that would be interesting to do Gethsemane
Oh
as
yeah.
as the atheist in the group.
Right.
It'd be very interesting to put the blanket at Gethsemane.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
So I want to I want to switch gears since you
Okay.
just brought this up.
Okay.
So I'm a person of faith, and you have said that you like this Jesus guy,
I
but
love
love Jesus guy, but
it.
religion isn't for you. I think that's probably a fair way to kind of
Mm.
how you've done it. And so we've gotten along incredibly well, and worked on a number of projects. So we're talking about religion and politics. What's been the bright spot for you? And this is a real hard question. Bright spot for you, in the midst of all of that, for when we're talking about this whole idea of religion and politics and healthy conversations.
You,
Oh,
Pastor Chris over
yeah.
at
Chris
Church, Chris.
Schwab. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just wonderful people. But I'll tell you this really quick story. Both
Yeah.
of my speak Arabic, read, write, and speak Arabic.
Uh-huh.
So my daughter went to the Arab language school in Fez, Morocco, and my son went to school in Cairo.
Okay.
And so my son and his best friend were on a motorcycle ride. I did not know this story till it was over. For very good, I was very grateful. I mean,
Okay.
the story had happened, but I was grateful I didn't know it until it was over. So they rented a motorcycle the weekend before they were going to leave Egypt because they wanted to see more of it,
Sure.
more of the countryside than they could. So they're goofing around. Two college guys,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Forget on a
Yeah.
motorcycle. So they're goofing around. They're out in the desert. They take a nasty turn. A truck's coming the other way. They ditch the bike. My son is John. John gets hurt a little bit, but his best friend Peter gets all the skin torn off his
Oh
stomach,
my gosh.
right? So they're in agony on the side of the road.
Yeah.
A man and his two sons stop. Luckily, John and Peter spoke Arabic because they were in
Yeah.
the Arabic
Right.
language school there. Um, the men pick them up and the motorcycle, put them in their truck. They take them to the hospital. They get there. There was a lot of medicine for Peter.
Sure.
John had boo-boos and things he had to
Yeah.
have fixed, but um, maybe you would want me calling it a boo-boo. But but so then these two men bring John and Peter home. They give
Wow.
up their beds. They
Oh my
put
gosh.
their beds. They make soup. They feed them. They fix the motorcycle. The sons fix the motorcycle. The kids stay there for a couple of days. When they're better and they can drive the motorcycle, and poor Peter, he was just, so sore.
Yeah.
Uh, they go back and return the bike and get their deposit back and, fly home the next week. These
Wow.
these men were members of the Church of Islam.
Yeah.
This is what the Quran taught them to do. You
Yeah.
see a person hurt on the side of the road, you pick them up and you own them
Yeah.
until they
Yeah.
are better, right? They paid for their medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, John said it was a very humble house, like literally
Oh,
made,
sure.
you know, and and the food was real good.
I'm sure I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. But so this is I think the beauty of religion is what it can help people achieve in themselves.
Yeah.
Um, Personally, and then have such a great relationship, but
Sure.
um, and that's okay because
Right.
I learned a lot of really important concepts
Yeah.
and the whole love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, I don't know how you improve on that one.
Right.
And,
Right.
and I think the thing that nobody gets is that's not a small lift.
Oh no.
You
Right.
know, I am particularly a germaphobe.
Yeah.
So I had this it was just last week. I hate to admit what a wimp and a creep I am, but this old lady, it was really hot and she was leaning against a building and I said, can I help you walk? I said, are you trying to go somewhere? She said, yeah, I've got to get back around in the building. I thought I could go for a walk.
Yeah.
So she held on to me and I walked, like we crawled. We
Yeah.
got around to the front of the building and she was so sweaty and
Oh,
smelly and
yeah.
sweaty. And she
Yeah.
was sweating on me.
Uh-huh.
I'm ashamed of myself. I mean, Matthew, I got her inside. She was okay.
Yeah.
I raced home and got in
Yeah.
the car. I mean,
Sure. Oh, that's too
I
funny.
don't think you can catch turning 80, but I had it all open.
So,
So
well, I love these stories. I mean, honestly, like what I hear in that when you're telling me the story about your son is I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's the story of the Good Samaritan in essence, right at the core of what's going on there. And you can even take that even further of like the parable of the Good Samaritan is this person who is considered an enemy of these people is the one who does the caretaking and goes above and beyond what the people who are supposed to be doing, the priest and the Levi who come and all that. So I just think that's absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to ask you about your time in 2004, if that's all right.
oh, okay.
So you were a vice presidential candidate for the
Mhm.
Green Party in 2004. Um, And I know you use that platform to highlight homelessness. Big shock there. Uh, and what and I know you traveled across the country, staying in homeless shelters as well. You wrote about it, sharing your experiences. Maybe you could just share a little bit with, what was that like, and what what was your encounter with folks who um maybe more kind of like their motivation with religious motivation. I'm sure you had positive and negative experiences. We've talked about that previously, with like folks who are really like very genuine, and others who are like trying to convert people.
Mm.
And I don't know if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Um, well, it was remarkable. And that was a case of, you know, everything, so you don't need to know anymore, right? That was
Mhm.
what happened to me.
Yeah.
Uh, when I used to volunteer one night a week at a homeless shelter. I made dinner for people at the homeless shelter. I didn't have any money. I was a single mom with two little kids, but my mother paid for the food and I cooked it. The
Mm.
kids and I cooked it. And after a while, I'd say to my kids, "You want to make some cupcakes?" And they'd say, "Are they for us or for the homeless?" They wouldn't even move until they knew if they were going to get to eat any of them.
Oh, that's funny.
Salivate at the
Yeah,
cookie,
yeah.
so they couldn't have them. Um, so, but I mean, once a month, I interfaced with people for 25 minutes. I knew everything. I didn't
Yeah.
have to. So when I suggested to the campaign that, the people I really care about, babies, veterans, mommies, old people, daddies, they're all in homeless shelters. I want to try and stay in homeless shelters around the country. Um, the campaign loved it, but I didn't know what I was talking about, right?
Oh.
So I thought, well, how tough can this be? The
Oof.
homeless do it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, there's that, right?
they don't have any extra equipment. They
Yeah.
have nothing, and they pull it off. How tough can this be? I'll tell you what, it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
It's and I always had a home. So I never had whatever that feeling is that says, this is all I got.
Yeah.
Because at any moment I could say, I mean, my germaphobe, right? Some of the most when I was in the New York City zero barrier shelter, yeah, it was on the seventh corner of Seventh and Madison, I think. The floor was moving. They
Wow.
turned the lights out, and every creepy crawly you
Oh
can
my
imagine.
gosh.
Oh, unbelievable. It was kept at about 50 degrees because you could hear, like, I don't know about death rattles, but horrible rattles. Those lights were everywhere for tuberculosis, the
Wow.
blue lights that kill the tubercules.
Yeah.
Um, there was a woman who's looked like she needed her feet amputated. I think she must have had terrible untreated diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was surrounded by like the overwhelming smell.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember one homeless woman told me that at times she put like dabbed her nose with chapstick. Um, but I mean, I wasn't going to sleep. I might stay there, but literally at any time, and finally about 10 minutes of 4 in the morning, I said to my homeless guide, I can't do this anymore. Like,
Mm.
I stayed in that shelter by watching 50 seconds, 60 seconds go by on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And so she and luckily I had some money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which she didn't have. And so I bought 2 tickets on the subway. And we rode the subway for about 3.5 hours and slept on the subway.
Wow.
So uh, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And because of that, and I finished out that year running for office, I thought I'm a writer and I'm a journalist. And I think what I call myself is a professional witness. I'm
Mm.
supposed to witness something and relate what I witnessed to other people, and either I'm good at it or I'm not, but that's my job. I'm a professional witness. So I thought I witnessed all this. I needed to write the stories of the people I met. And I
Yeah.
did keep a journal through the whole thing. And so the book is basically that journal. And it was a book read by a minister in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, who offered me a job to work with the homeless. But anyway, I walked into a shelter in, I think it was Fayetteville, Arkansas. And in Arkansas, at the time, at least, I'm not sure of the law right now, but at the time, I don't imagine it's changed. if you were no longer nursing your child, a nursing mom, and you were home identified as homeless, they would take your kids away from you.
Mm.
As though not having a roof was worse than not having a mommy. When it's, a kid will tell you, I'll live without the roof. I can't live without my mommy.
Right, right.
So I walked into this shelter where there were a number of women with nursing babies that were kind of old even, because, why would you stop nursing if they're going to take your baby away?
Yeah.
And there was a woman sitting there with a Bible open on her lap. So I'm finally answering your question.
Okay, that's fine.
So she had a Bible open on her lap, and she was really quite lovely. She had long, really pretty blonde hair, and like a prairie skirt on, and
Yeah.
this Bible open on her lap. And she said to me after everybody met me, because I didn't hide who I was. Everybody
Yeah,
knew I was
sure.
vice president and stuff. And she said to me, I've been waiting for you.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
A little pressure there.
Yeah, really.
And I said, oh, well, I said, blah, 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 blah. I'm very happy to meet you. And she said, she points to her open Bible.
Uh-huh.
He sent you.
Wow.
Okay, pressure goes up another
Yeah,
notch.
just a little bit, right?
Um, and I said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's a pretty, I don't know that I want that responsibility.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
explain that you can't choose that. And she said, you're here. She had lost both of her children.
Hmm.
She would get them back when she got housing.
Hmm.
She worked. She had a rather sizable income tax return that she was anticipating getting, and having the money for the first months, for the security deposit in the first
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
So she was really excited that she was going to be getting her house, a place to live, and her kids back. And she had outstanding student loans, and her return was garnished.
Oh my gosh.
So it never came. The federal government or the bank or whomever took her return. So when people talk about this student debt forgiveness, they have
Yeah.
no idea how really valuable that is
Oh,
on
sure.
1,000 levels. Anyway, so she was very upset and really clinging to her faith over all of this.
Yeah.
And so she told me her story, and I said, well, how am I? And her story's in my book, if people want to, read it. And you should tell your local library to get it. It's called Still Left Out in America, because that way you don't have to buy it. But if you do buy it, it helps homeless people. So whatever. Anyway, so I said, well, what do I have? What does God want me to do for you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I here?
Yeah.
If we're going with your premise. And she said, you are going to turn George Bush's heart.
Wow.
And another pretty heavy lift, right?
That's yeah, seriously. That's a small order.
Yeah. So, there was no publicity about the Green Party's vice presidential. There
Sure.
was a little bit, but I'd go to a
Yeah.
local town, and all the different news organizations
Right.
cover me, but there wasn't NBC Nightly News saying,
Right.
"Hey, vice president." If Dick Cheney had done it,
Yeah, sure.
would have covered it, or John Edwards, but there, that wasn't happening. So, she said, you're going to set an example, and you will turn George Bush's heart.
Wow.
And I said, maybe God will turn George Bush's heart when he loses the election.
Ooh.
Maybe the message God needs to send to George Bush is, if you don't care about my people, you lose the election. Now, I'm an atheist, right? So
Yeah,
I'm having
right.
this argument with this
Right.
conversation with this woman, just
Right.
trying to, I guess, suppose, I apologize, but devil's advocate, is that a better word?
Yeah, sure.
What's the devil's advocate?
That's all right.
So, so she looked at me, she was just horrified.
Oh,
And she said, oh no, he can't lose.
okay. Why not?
I don't know.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
I said, so I'm the candidate that is here with you,
Right.
and you don't want me to win. And that's the way he learns. And it didn't have to be me. It could
Right.
be John Edwards and
Right.
John Kerry, that could have won and made him lose and see, but I don't know that life would be much better for the homeless
Right.
if that happened.
Right.
Um,
Sure.
but I was the candidate allegedly walking with the poorest among
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
but she really felt that George Bush had to be the man who would be president. And
Yeah. There's a
I
whole
got,
lot. Boy, like, it's just bringing to mind so many different books that I have read about politics and identity and all sorts of things. The book I'm currently reading, it's I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's Richard Slotkin is the author,
oh
and
yeah.
it's about there's five basic myths in the country, and there's different ways of looking at these myths. So there's the myth of the frontier, the founding myth,
Mm.
the myth around the Civil War. I forgot what the other two. I'm in the Civil War part right now. But it's like getting into all that kind of very deep type of things. I did want to ask you, since you're a journalist, you've written about a lot of things, you've run for office as well, homeless advocate. And so since 2004, going forward to now, so the last 20 years, last 2 decades, how have you seen politics and religion change? What's been your observation with those two things, how they interact, how they don't interact, what their health, all that type of stuff?
Uh,
Yeah, a nice easy question, right?
yeah, I'm from New England.
Yeah,
I moved to Carlisle, Pennsylvania when that minister read my book.
yeah.
So religion changed for me enormously by leaving New England.
Mm,
So it's really hard for me to say what's different in religion because to me, where you live in the country
mm, yeah,
matters for religion. Uh,
sure.
I mean, I'm brought up by French and Irish Catholics,
Yeah,
which means whatever,
yeah.
whatever it means. But you know, I'm going to say foolish devotion to, in my opinion,
Yeah.
it's foolish devotion to dogmatism. And I mean,
Mm,
that's what the iconoclastic revolution was about, right? Back, if
yeah.
not to be too picky about going back into the Protestant Reformation, which I'm sure you
Right.
could over
I'm
from,
I'm
but
familiar with that. Yeah.
yeah. But smashing out the stained glass
Right.
because that's not the point, right?
Right. Right.
But when I came down to Central PA, like if I'm in any community, any fairly large community
Yeah.
in New England, every single church you look at is a Catholic church, pretty
Yeah.
much. Um, so you come down here, not that there aren't Protestants, there's just so you come down here and I mean I don't there are some rituals I enjoy, and one of them
Sure.
is the Stations of the Cross at the
Yeah.
Catholic Church. I like the incense and I like the whole idea that someone would give up everything for the
Hmm.
love of other people. I've told you I'm a big Jesus fan, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of his dad. I don't think he should have wanted his son to do that, but I won't
Okay.
digress. So so but I get down here, and if I hadn't gone to a Protestant Bible camp when I was a kid, because
Mm.
my best friend's dad was a minister, I wouldn't have even known what people were talking about.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Like I am in homeless shelters, working in homeless shelters,
Yeah.
and I literally had people coming in saying, "Can you get me an orphan? Have you got any widows?" And
Wow.
yeah, because there was this desire to fulfill the demands in the Bible,
Uh,
right? And there it's just so for me, my religious experience
yeah.
was this. I mean, the difference basically between Protestants and Catholics is Protestants read the Bible themselves. Catholics have it interpreted for them, right?
That's a very simplistic
Yeah.
difference, but because even the Protestants, there's a whole range
I
of even what it means to read the Bible.
think that's got to be true because I mean, not all Protestants I've met have been the type who like that's
Right.
literalism, but I have seen a lot of literalism.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So the one end of the spectrum, you have the more literalistic, and that's usually on the more fundamentalist and evangelical side of things. And then you have the more traditional, right? Where it's more, well, this is the Bible, and this is what it says. And then you have the more the spectrum of Protestantism to a more critical historical read of the scripture, or understanding that, there's the big word is hermeneutic. What's the lens you're looking through, and understanding that, some of this is poetry, some of it is history, some of it is prophecy, some of it is mythological, some of it is parable, and so you don't take the whole thing as one clump and read it all the same way, just like you wouldn't with going into a library and reading every book the same
Yeah.
way.
Right. Well, and so I think for me, religion's just changed because of the
Sure.
type of religion I'm exposed to.
Yeah.
I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, and so I had I still have friends that are Jews, and that
Yeah.
faith is also very interesting to me. Then, of
Yeah.
course, kids were both Arabic scholars, so but
Yeah.
politics is interesting right now, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, because I have an extensive background in politics as well, having worked for elected officials and gotten people elected, and for over 2 decades ago. And I look at it now and I'm like, wow, very different. I mean, I worked for a member of Congress during the Clinton impeachment
Yeah.
in DC. And like, people ask, what's that like? And I'm like, it's a it's an experience. That's about the best way to describe it. One that I don't wish other people ever have to go through, because it's a no-win situation for anyone. It's just horrible all around. And like, I remember when there was talk about impeaching Clinton, and I remember we came in on Monday into the office. The phones went over. So this is back in the day. The phones were set on an automatic answering service. And so at 8 o'clock, that would switch back over to live. And so the phone rang from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. And it was just one call after the other for 2 weeks straight. And it was probably 1/3 of the calls were people in the district, and the other 2/3 were people outside of the district calling like every representative. And of course we had to say, you need to call your own representative. Well, we pay your bill, we pay your no, this is how this works. You need to contact and let your representative know what you're thinking and all. Well, how's he going to vote? Well, that's not, you need to call you.
Yeah.
Like, and there were like anger a lot, and so like these staffers just got all of the anger of people on both sides, and it was just such a um crushing experience is the best way to describe it. And in spite of that, so that's going back to 99, 98, 99. Now I'm like, holy cow, it feels worse than even
Yeah.
that time period. And to me, it feels like it's a lot of it has to do with identity for people, right? I mean, think about the last quarter of a century. That, to me, I have this theory of there's this relationship between the decline of religion and people identifying with religion that has to be replaced with something. And people have been having an increase of their identity being attached to their partisan or political or ideological basis, is kind of like how they're defining themselves.
Mm.
I mean, that's my working theory. I don't know.
I think that what's going on today began back then, and even before that.
Yeah.
I think Ronald Reagan was probably the beginning of it. And there's a great book, The Man Who Could Sell Anything.
Hmm.
Um, and that's what he was. He was a salesman. He sold you cigarettes, and a whole pile of you died of lung cancer, right? He was like the Marlboro Man,
Yeah.
and he was affable and friendly and nice, and you know he waited till Mitch Snyder was almost dead to say the word homelessness.
Hmm.
Mitch Snyder was advocating for people experiencing homelessness, and he was doing a hunger strike in front of the White House. But he put such a nice shine on that. They emptied the state hospitals, where people who had mental illness were basically warehoused with all of this funding in place for housing. And then he cut mental health spending by more than any other president before or since. And all of those people who were supposed to have housing ended up on the street. And people blame current homelessness for that. And, sorry, folks, but all of those people are dead.
Yeah,
it was,
right.
40 something years ago that they emptied those hospitals. But I have known so many, I mean, countless, because I'm a green, I'm probably pretty much the universal lover and the universally hated. If nobody wants a third party involved in anything. So
Sure.
if they think you can work for them, that's great. Otherwise, you're everybody's piñata. But I have known, impossible to count on all my hands, all my feet, everybody else's hands and feet, the number of noble, loving, decent Republicans.
Sure.
I cannot tell you how many I have known, and I want to know what happened to them. Where did they go? Why are they silent? I had a wonderful friend who was a Maine state senator, Republican. Love this guy. Used to have him on my show all the time when I was in radio. And he voted consistently against healthcare for people in the state. Every time he voted against healthcare for people in the state. And when it came time to sign up for healthcare as a senator, he refused.
Wow.
Because he said, I don't believe the government should be paying for this. And if I don't believe the government should be paying for it for Joe Lobsterman, I'm not going to let the government pay for mine.
Wow.
Now that's
pretty consistent. Actually.
Yeah, that's the kind that. So I can have an ideological difference with this guy. Right? But I trusted him, I respected him, and I knew that he was sincere.
Yeah. You said the key word there is that idea of trust. Right. If you can trust somebody, it doesn't matter how much you're going to have a disagreement, but if there's a level of trust, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well then let's figure out what do we agree on? What can we work together on? Because I know I can trust you, and you're going to tell me the things that we do disagree on. And it's like, okay, well then we're just not going to go there. We're not going to deal, because this is more important. I know we're running out of time. So I want to ask you, this is a fun question. It may take the rest of the time. If you could wave a magic wand, Pat, over religion, politics, society, journalism, what would you do?
Oh.
That's a big question. I know.
Not in the judging business. I'm in the housing business. Right. If I was in the judging business, half of Congress wouldn't have a house.
Well, that's different. But on a positive side, how's that? Wave a magic wand. And
I gotta tell you, I watched the scene of the man attacking the journalists in at the rally.
Yeah.
I was at the Moms for Liberty conference.
Right. You were covering it for the paper you write for.
Right.
You want to clarify that.
Yes. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, I was a journalist. I got my press credentials. I went in. I requested to be able to go and interview the little guys that had come to talk absolute garbage. But anyway, but that's not what they wanted. Moms for Liberty wanted us for the big guys, for the Vivek Ramaswamy, for for everybody that was there. At that time, Huckabee, no, not Huckabee.
Was it the
former governor of Arkansas?
Oh, Mike Huckabee?
Or no, not Huckabee, but no, neither.
Asa Hutchinson?
Hutchinson, Asa Hutchinson was still in the race. He was wonderful, literally. I mean, that's why he doesn't exist in the Republican Party anymore, right?
Sure.
But he should be speaking out. Anyway, Donald Trump got up, and there were people there with there's some people brought their children.
Yeah.
Probably 1,000 people in the room. And the journalists were kept in a pen, similar to what we saw in the video. So we're all in this pen. and we're not allowed out.
Yeah.
Like you can't move outside the pen to get a better picture
Yeah.
in the pen. Um, and he just kept pointing at us.
Oh, wow.
That's your enemy.
Mm.
That's your enemy. Turn around, look at the enemy. And I'm thinking, why are we here?
Yeah.
Why is
Right.
the New York Times here? Why is the Washington Post here? Why is CNN here? Why we were
Yeah.
all there, right? Little Dinky me and all these big
Yeah.
guys. Why are we here? For him, and so people were turning their children and
Yeah.
pointing at us like he was.
Wow.
And that I have been a journalist for more than 40 years.
Yeah.
I have never seen that happen.
Yeah.
That enemy is here, and it's that person trying to write down the truth.
Wow.
And I'm not saying I don't have an opinion. I'm
Sure.
saying I write my opinion, and I will interview absolutely everybody on a topic if they'll give me an interview.
Sure.
But I mean, a lot of times I have to write, I contacted their office and they wouldn't get back to me.
Right.
Because
Of
that's the
course.
case.
Right.
So I would like civility, like my magic civility wand, maybe
Oh,
that.
okay.
Um,
All right. So how would you define civility? What would that you're gonna have to do that in like 60 seconds.
well, I could go back to that, treat others the way you want to treat them.
Mm,
You are your brother's keeper. You're like, find,
yeah.
you know, um, there is absolutely no reason I should leave a little old lady at the back of a building
Right.
who can't even walk anymore to the front of the building. There's no reason that those men should leave my son on the side of the road,
Yeah.
although the inclination is to do both.
Yeah.
And while I don't think that I would necessarily have been a bad person if I had been too upset or too creeped out or too unable to help that woman. So if people can't get there, I get it,
Yeah.
but it's our job. So
Right.
if you can't be the person that helps the old lady at the front of the building or picks John up off the side of the road, then you damn well better be willing to pay your taxes for an ambulance.
Yeah.
And you better stop complaining about the fact that that you pay taxes for someone else to be there to and demand, then become engaged in politics and demand that's what your taxes pay for.
Right.
Don't write my name on the side of a bomb. I don't
Right.
want to bomb anybody,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Mm,
No,
yeah.
that makes a ton of sense. Well, good.
You
What we
ask
need, I
hard
mean,
questions, Matthew.
well, hey, this is what I try to dive into deep stuff, and this is what I enjoy talking about and listening and hearing folks and just share their wisdom. So I want to thank you very much, Pat, for coming on. We didn't even get a chance to really talk about American Roulette or the Blanket Project. We'll put some links in the video when I post the video for those things, and I encourage folks to check those out. These are great projects. The book is, again, it's a tool for people to be able to have difficult conversations around gun violence, and as Pat has often said, it's also a great mystery. Just it's a great thriller, it's a great mystery, it really is. And we had 10 different folks collaborating on this, and it's just an incredible project. And then the Memorial Blanket Project, by this point we've had thousands of blankets. uh, in it, I can't believe this is the fourth year that it's going to be taking place. It's going to be in Philadelphia, and the last couple of years we've had over 1,000 blankets, and it's just incredible. And yeah, the visual, but then all of those going out. So yeah, we're going to encourage folks to go to those. Lastly, my next guest is going to be September 15th is when the next show is, and it's Justin Douglas, who is the new Dauphin County Commissioner, who was
Oh,
also, he used to be a pastor before he was the Dauphin County Commissioner. So it's going to be another conversation about religion and politics. How has he seen this? What was his motivation for running for office and all that type of stuff? It'll be a really great conversation. Pat, any quick last words? I want to thank you very much for coming on. Any quick last words?
I really appreciate this. And yeah, memorialblanket.org or americanroulette.vip. And you can find out some more about both of those. If you love to make blankets, if your family's saying no more scarves, we got a job for you.
There we go. Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.